Alright, what's going on everyone? Today we're going to be looking at how to create a responsive navigation menu inside of Vue 3, and we're also going to be using the Vue Animations to animate our responsive navigation menu when we get down to a smaller viewport. Okay, now we're not going to be creating this whole entire page here. I just went ahead and added this hero section to go ahead and fill some space in for this demo. Now, our navigation is pretty simple. We're going to have our branding on the left here, and then we're going to have our nav links on the right. And when we hover over them, they're going to change color, and also a border bottom is going to appear underneath those as well. All right, so when we inspect this, and we get down to a smaller viewport, which is going to be 750, it's going to convert to a mobile navigation here. You can see that the links are going to disappear. And then we're going to show this icon right here of our 3 bars. Now, when we click on this, our navigation menu is going to slide in from the left, and then if we click on it again, it's going to slide back out, and we're also going to be animating our icon here. All right, so that's what we're going to be building here, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, if you want to follow along, I've uploaded the starting files to a repository over on GitHub, so the link will be down below in the description for that. And then once you head over to this link, you're going to want to click on this green button right here that says code, and then you're going to simply download the zip, and then you can open it up with your text editor of choice, and you'll have all the starting files that I'm going to be using here for this tutorial. Now in this repo, I've already went ahead and created a few things for us. Now the first thing I went ahead and created was our hero section here inside of our home view. So as you can see, that's right here. I'm not going to go over this, but you can find all the styling and HTML for this right here in our home view. Now I also went ahead and created our empty navigation component here, which is what we're going to be focusing on in this tutorial. And then in our app.vue, I went ahead and created a few global styles. So first off, I'm importing a Google font here inside of the style tags. And then I have our simple reset. Then I'm defining our app to have a min height of 100 VH. And then I have our container class, which we're using here on the home view. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Now the first thing we need to go ahead and do here is actually start up our local servers. So to do this, I'm going to head to our terminal. And then I have one already open, I believe. So you want to cd into your directory that has the Vue structure, which in my case is going to be navigation menu, which I am right now. And then all you simply want to go ahead and do is say npm run serve, and this is going to go ahead and start up your local development server. Now, once completed, you'll see that our app is going to be running on our local host, and for me, it's on port 8081. So I already have this open in my browser. So if I head over to my browser on port 8081 on localhost, you'll see here we have our starting project with our hero section that I went ahead and created in the starting repo. So what we want to focus on is going to be the navigation here. So let's go ahead and begin to implement that. Now in our navigation component here, let's start with our markup. So I'm going to remove this div here, and I'm going to go ahead and create a header tag. And then we're going to do a little class binding here. And the class I want to go ahead and bind to this tag is going to be scrolled nav here. And we only want to apply this class if a data value, which we haven't created yet, of scroll position is true. So we will go ahead and create this in just a moment after we finish our markup. But what this is going to do is when you scroll down on the page to a certain amount of pixels, we're going to go ahead and shrink the navigation. Okay, and we'll go ahead and get to that near the end when we actually finish up our header or our navigation here. But I just wanted to kind of explain what we're doing here. Now inside of our header, we're going to go ahead and create our nav tag. And then first off, what I want to do inside of this nav tag is create our branding here. So we're going to have a div with the class of branding. Now inside of here, we're going to have our image, which you can find inside of the assets here, which is going to be our logo.png. So we're going to say @ and then we'll say assets, and then we're going to say logo.png here. All right, and that's going to be it for our branding. Now we also want to create our navigation link. So what we're going to do here is have a UL with the class of navigation. Okay. Now we're also going to have another data value on here. So I'm going to go ahead and say v show if mobile is not true. And we'll go ahead and create this in just a little bit as well. But I just wanted to add that on there for now. Okay. Now inside of our UL, we're going to have our li tags, and then we're going to have our router link. Okay. And then we're also going to give these a class of link here. And then I want to go ahead and bind our to attribute, because you have to have a to attribute on your router links, okay? And what we're going to do here is, instead of just leaving them blank, I want to show you how you would go ahead and set this up if you were actually creating a real navigation. So I always prefer to bind my to attributes on the router link in case you change your route path here in the router. So you can see here that we have a path of \. So technically I could just go ahead and say to and get rid of this and just say like this, and that would work. But if I change the home path here to something different like /home, then I would have to go ahead and change all of my paths that I have set to this to home, and that could be kind of tedious to go ahead and do. So to get around that, what you can do, I'm going to go ahead and put this back, is you can actually reference the name of the route instead of actually using the path. So you're not going to change the name of the path, you're not going to change the name of the route probably as much as you might change the path. So this just makes it easier in the case or the event that you do go ahead and update those paths. So let's go ahead and put this back. I probably don't need to get rid of that. Put our curly brackets there and say to. Now to go ahead and set this up, you're going to go ahead and pass the name value here and then the actual name of the route you want to go ahead and pass it to. Now we can say home for this one because we're actually going to make it say home. And then for the additional ones, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this down 3 more times. And then for the rest, I just want to go ahead and get rid of this and put it to an empty string right there, because we don't have those routes created. So we don't want to get any kind of warning, so we can go ahead and just leave those as empty strings. And then for the rest of them, we're going to have about, and then we're going to have ports, folio, and then we're going to have our contact here, okay? And then what I also forgot to show you is that in our index.html, I also went ahead and imported Font Awesome, which is a font icon library. Okay, so that's in our public.html here. So next up, what we're going to have here is under our UL, we're going to have a div with the class of icon here. And then what we want to go ahead and do here is pass in our I, and we're going to have a class of FA bars here. Okay, and we also want to put a vshow here if mobile is true. And like I said, we'll go ahead and create this value here in just a moment. Now we also want to pass a click event here called toggle mobile nav whenever we click on this. This is what we're going to use to open and close our navigation menu on mobile. Okay, and then the last thing I want to go ahead and do is another class binding. So we're going to go ahead and do this at the end here. So we're going to say class. We're going to pass in our curly brackets here. And the class that we want to go ahead and create or add to this is going to be icon active here. Okay. Now we only want to display this if mobile nav is currently true, which mobile nav is another value we're going to go ahead and create, which is going to determine if our mobile navigation is actually open or not, which will be triggered by this click event right here. So hopefully that makes sense. Lastly, I want to go ahead and create our mobile navigation markup here. So I want to go ahead and create a transition tag here, and we're going to go ahead and pass this in name of mobile nav. Okay. Oops, and go ahead and do that, and then we'll say transition here. So if you weren't aware, Vue has these custom tags called transition, which you can go ahead and use to animate the elements within a Vue project. Okay, so we went ahead and passed it a name of mobile nav here, which we'll go ahead and reference in our styling when we go to animate this. Okay, so inside of here, we're going to have our UL, which I can honestly just copy this right here to save some time. They're going to be the same. And the only thing we want to go ahead and change here is we want to say vshow only if mobile nav is true. And then for our class here, we're going to have this have a class name of Dropdown nav here. Okay, so if we head over to our project, you're not going to see any of the markup we just implemented because we currently don't have this component imported into our app. So before we go ahead and begin styling this, what I want to do is head over to our app.vue and actually import this. So where we're going to do this is inside of our div with the class of app. So we're going to say navigation here, and then we'll end that. And then we need to import that here in our script tag. So we're going to say import, and we're going to say navigation from, and then our components, and then our navigation here. And then lastly, we need to go ahead and create our components inside of our export default here, and then register our navigation. Okay, so if we save that, head over now, we can see that I probably spelled something wrong. Let me see, Navigation, and there we go. So that misspelling went ahead and gave us an error, but with that you can see that we have our navigation here on the very top, which we need to go ahead and do some styling. So let's go ahead and address that. So here in our style tag, let's go ahead and create a few line breaks to create some space in here. Let's start off with our header tag here. And what we want to do is give this a background color of RGBA. And let's go ahead and remove this right here. Oops. And what we're going to say in here is we're going to go ahead and give it a black value. So we're going to say 000, and then we're going to go ahead and say 80% opacity there, so 0.08. Now what we want to do is pass this a z-index value of 99, and we want to go ahead and give this a width of 100%. And we're going to position this fixed, so if you were to scroll down on your website, that the header is going to stay fixed at the very top the entire time. Okay. And then what we want to go ahead and do is give this a transition of a ½ second, ease, and all. And this is going to pertain to the scrolled nav class we're going to add here in just a little bit. Okay, and then for the color, I'm going to go ahead and pass white here. Now, the next thing I want to go ahead and do is we're going to nest this. Since we're going to be using SCSS, I'm going to go ahead and target our nav. So we're going to go ahead and start off by giving this a display of flex direction of row. And then we're going to give it a padding on the top and bottom of 12 pixels, 0 on the left and right, and a transition here of 0.5 seconds, ease, all. And then we want to go ahead and give this a width of 90. And we're going to say margin 0 auto. Now this is going to be our mobile first approach here. So what we're going to do is pass a media query here. And we're going to say min width, and we're going to say 1440 pixels, or sorry, not 1440, 1140 here. And then we'll go ahead and open our curly brackets here, and we're going to say a max width of 1140 here. All right. Now, next up, what I want to go and do inside of our nav here is I want to target our ULs and our link here. So we're going to do a little shared styling. And what we're going to do is we're going to give it a font weight of 500. We're going to pass it a color value of white, a list style of none, and also a text decoration of none as well. Okay, let's go ahead and scroll down here. Now, next up, what I want to go ahead and target is going to be our link, which is what we have, or the class that we have on our router link here. And actually, no, I got ahead of myself. We're going to target that, but just a moment. We want to target our LIs first here. So for our LI, we want to do a text, let's see, transform, set this to uppercase, and we want to give it a padding value of 16 on all sides, and then a margin left of 16 pixels here. Okay, and that's going to do it for our LI. Now for our link tag, I want to go ahead and give these a font, let's see, font size of 14 pixels. We're going to go ahead and give this a transition as well of ½ second, ease all. We're going to give it a padding on the bottom of 4 pixels, and then we're going to pass it a border bottom here. Let's see, border bottom, 1 pixel solid, and then transparent. Now, the reason why we're passing a border bottom solid transparent is because we're going to add a hover effect here, and what we're going to do is simply go ahead and change the border color to the color that we want to go ahead and apply on the hover effect. So what we're going to say is and hover, because we're using SCSS, so we can go ahead and do this, and we're going to say color, and we're going to say 00 AFEA, which is going to be a nice blue, and then for the border color, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. So we can say border dash color, and then we'll say 00 AFEA. Okay, And then once we go ahead and get our branding in our image, we can go ahead and take a look. It should actually start to look a lot better than what we had originally here. So just below our link, I want to go ahead and target our branding here. And for this, we're going to go ahead and say display flex. We're going to align the items to the center here. And then for our image, I want to go ahead and give this a fixed width of 50 pixels. And then we're also going to apply another transition here. And this is simply going to be when we update our scrolled navigation class, we're going to do a little bit of, we're going to add a little difference to our image here. So to have that smoothly transition from the property here to the property we're going to change it, we want to go ahead and add that transition property on this class or this image tag here. So we're going to say 0.5 seconds, ease, and all. So now if we take a look, we should start to see that it is getting a little better. So our image is a lot smaller, but now we have to work on our actual nav links here. But as you can see, when we hover over them, they have this really smooth transition to our different color and then the border bottom. Okay, so let's go ahead and next, we're not going to see this just yet because we haven't actually defined the this value here of mobile. But what I want to go ahead and do is target our icons. So what we can actually do for now to actually see this is let's go ahead inside of our script tag up here, and let's go ahead and create our data. So first off, I want to go ahead and give this component a name, navigation. And then for our data here, let's go ahead, and I always forget to do this, we're going to add a comma. So we're going to say data, and then we're going to return here. And then what we want to do is we're going to give the define the values here. And what I'm probably going to do is just copy and paste these in to save some time here. Okay, so we have our scroll position, we have our mobile nav, and then we have our window width here, which I'll go ahead and we're going to go ahead and get to this in a moment, what this is going to be for. All right, so what we want to go ahead and do now is if we head over to our application, we should not see anything. But if we change mobile to, I believe, true, we should then see our mobile navigation icon here. Okay, so you can see that's going to be right there. So let's go ahead and style that up real quick. So let's head back to our application here, or our project. And for the icon, what we want to do is head right below our branding here, and we're going to say icon. Okay, and we want to display this as flex first off, and then we want to position this absolute. All right, now we want to go ahead and put this at the top, so we're going to say top 0, and then to keep this organized, we want to align the items to the center here. Okay, and then we want to go ahead and say right, and we're going to do 24 pixels from the right. All right, so now what we also want to do is give this a height percentage of 100%. And then if we take a look at this now, we should see that our icon's on the right here, and then we have it all the way on this side. But I think what we need to actually do here is on our navigation, or our nav, we need to go ahead and say position, I believe, relative, and that should go ahead and position that inside of our container that we went ahead and set here on our navigation, on our nav tag here. Okay, so that looks a lot better. So this icon is really small, so we still need to go ahead and do some styling to that. So let's head back down here, and then what we want to say is target our I class inside of our icon here. We're going to go ahead and say cursor pointer. We'll say, oops, did that wrong. So cursor pointer, and then we're going to say font size here of 24 pixels. And then we're going to go ahead and give this a transition again of 0.8 seconds this time, and ease all. Okay, geez, having some trouble. Okay, so if you recall, what we did is we did a class binding on here to mobile nav, and then we gave this icon, or this class of icon active. So what this icon active class is going to do is you want to go outside of this here. So we're going to say icon active. Is it's simply going to go ahead and rotate our icon to kind of give it a cool effect when we click on it, so a user knows that something's happening. So how we can do that is by saying transform. We're going to say rotate, and then do simply 180 degrees in here. And then once we go ahead and add this click event here, or our method, or our function, whatever you want to call it, of toggle mobile nav, you'll see that happen actually on our application here. Okay, so that icon looks a lot better now. So to continue working on things here, what I'm going to go ahead and do is actually change this to false for now. Okay, so if we head back over to our application, you can still see that we have these displayed as this. And I don't know, did we forget something here? Let me go ahead and take a look. Yes, so we did go ahead and miss something. So back in our styling here, I completely forgot to go ahead and style our navigation here, which is pretty simple. So we got ahead of ourselves. Now before our icon, I want to go ahead and target the navigation class here. And simply what we want to go ahead and do is set this to display flex. Want to align the items to the center. We want to say flex value here of 1. And then to justify or get this navigation on the right-hand side of our navigation menu or bar, you want to say justify content and say flex end there. All right, so we take a look now. That looks a lot better and is now positioned on the right-hand side of our application here. Now, the last thing we need to go ahead and style up here is our drop-down navigation. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and inspect this here. And now this isn't going to work when we shrink down because we haven't set up our functionality yet, but I want to go ahead and mimic the view here. So what we can do is we can head over to our app here, and in our data, we're going to say mobile and set this to true. And then our mobile nav, let's set this to true as well. So that should therefore hide our original navigation and show our mobile navigation here. And now our icon is also visible. So let's go ahead and style this up. So in our style sheet here, just below the icon and icon active, we're going to target our drop down nav class here. And we want to start off by saying display flex. We're going to say flex direction column. We want to position this as fixed. And we're going to say width is 100% of the available space, but we want to go ahead and say no larger than 250 pixels here. And then for the height, we're going to define this as 100%. And the background color, we're going to change to white. Okay. And then we want to go ahead and set the top value to 0, and then also our left to 0. Okay. And that's going to go ahead and do it for our simple styling on our dropdown. But now we want to go ahead and target some of the classes inside of here, or the tags. So we want to say on the LI, we want to go ahead and reset the margin left to 0. And then inside of our LI, we have our link. And then what we want to do here is set the color to black, and we need to put our money sign there. Okay, and that should do it for our styling here on our navigation. So let's go ahead and take a look and see how this looks. So as you can see, currently we have this displaying and it looks just like our demo. So now we need to go ahead and implement the functionality to where we can go ahead and resize our screen. This will hide, and our navigation will show. And then when we get down to a mobile view here, you want to be able to click on this and toggle this navigation menu. So let's go ahead and begin by just changing these to null again, and let's go ahead and change these to null. Now inside of our export default here, what I want to go ahead and do is define our methods here. All right, so let's go ahead and create the function here of toggle mobile nav so that we can toggle our mobile nav open and close. So what we're going to say here is a very simple function. We're going to say this dot mobile nav equals the opposite of this dot mobile nav. Now if we actually, I guess we should have kept this to true, and we head back over to our application, we should be able to click on this and it's going to hide and show our navigation. And as you can see, when we click on this, now our icon here is going to do a rotation of 180 degrees, which I think is a really cool animation here to kind of, improve the user experience. All right, so that is all working. Now, once we finish our functionality here, we'll go ahead and implement the smoothness of this coming in and out. But for right now, you can see it's very explicit and it looks pretty bad. All right. Anyways, so what we want to go ahead and do next is the ability to detect if it's on mobile or not, because right now there's no way to go ahead and do that. So what we need to do inside of our methods here is create a function. This function is going to be called check screen here. Okay, and what we want to go ahead and do in here is we want to get the window.inner width. So what we're going to say is this dot window width, which is this value right here, and we're going to set this equal to window dot inner, not height, inner width here. Okay. Now, then with this, what we want to say here is if this dot window width, which is this value right here, is less than or equal to 750, then we're going to say this dot mobile equals true. Okay. And then we're going to return out of here. So if this is not true, then what we want to go ahead and do is say this dot mobile equals false. And then we also want to say this dot mobile nav equals false as well. And then we'll return out of here. Now you may be wondering why we went ahead and said this to false. Now, say just for sake of this demonstration and demo, if the user is trying to test out the responsiveness here and the mobile navigation is open and they're closing it and opening it, they may have a problem where the mobile navigation menu is stuck open because there's no way to close it. So what's going to happen is when a user gets above the screen size, it'll automatically close that if it is open. So just a little way to go ahead and keep our application from running smoothly if someone is trying to go ahead and break it or something like that. So not necessary, but just something you can go ahead and implement to avoid that from happening. Okay. So as you can see, when I was doing this, nothing happened because we don't have a way to actually run this function here. So let's go ahead and actually do that. So what we want to do is inside of our created lifecycle hook here, which we haven't defined it, so let's go ahead and create that. We want to listen for a event to happen on our application, which in our case is going to be a resize. So we can say window.add event listener there, and then we're going to say we want to listen for a resize, and each time there's a resize, we're going to run the function of this.check screen. Okay, now not only do you want to listen for the resize, we also want to run this function explicitly when the application is first created here. So now if we head over to our app here, you should see when we actually start to resize it here, nothing happens. Did we do something wrong here? Let me go ahead and see, because that should work. Let's see. So the issue is inside of our event listener here, I went ahead and explicitly tried to call this function with our parentheses here, which we don't need to do. We can simply just say this.check screen and that'll go ahead and run our function down here whenever this event is triggered. Okay, so if we head over to our application now and I try to resize it, you should see that it should all work properly. And when we get down below 750, our icon appears, this disappears, and I can go ahead and click and toggle our mobile navigation here. Now with the implementation here, I said if this is not true, we wanted to set this to false. Let me show you how this will work. So for example, if we have it open and we're trying to resize our application here, it'll close that so we don't break our website or our application here, because if it stayed open, you can see our icon disappear, so we would have no way to get rid of this menu besides trying to go ahead and refresh our application here. So the final piece of functionality I want to go and implement is going to be when we scroll on our application, our navigation is going to shrink in size a little bit. Okay, so currently we're not going to be able to see this unless we add some additional content to our actual app here. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So in our home, let's go ahead and do a section here, and let's just add a paragraph with lorem. We'll say like 1000. We can hit tab there, and that should go ahead and allow us to have some additional content. Let me see here. That was really a lot of lorem. So you can see we'll have this right here. So if we head over to our application now, we should be able to scroll, and you can see that our navigation menu is fixed, so it is coming with us. So now what we want to do is actually implement the functionality for it to detect when it's scrolling past a certain height so that it can go ahead and change. Okay, so in our app here, we can go ahead and close out of this. And what we want to go ahead and do is create ourselves a new method, and that's going to be called update, let's see, scroll here. Now I made a little bit of a mistake earlier, and what I want to go ahead and do is change this value of scroll position to scrolled nav for this to make more sense, because with that value it doesn't really make sense what we're going to be triggering or what we're going to be changing. So we'll change this to scrolled nav here. Okay, so we're going to be doing something very similar to this function right here, but this time what we're going to be doing is we're going to say we're going to declare a new variable here called scroll, let's see, POS position here, and we want to set this equal to window dot scroll and Y. Okay, now what we want to go ahead and do here is we want to say if scroll position is greater than 50, then we're going to say this dot scroll nav equals true. And then we'll return out of here. And if it is not true, then we're going to say scroll nav is false. So we'll say this dot scroll nav equals false. So like I said here, if we have this equates to true, then this class of scroll nav will be applied to our application here. Now we never went ahead and actually set up that class. Let's go ahead and do that really quick here. So down below, let's head all the way to the bottom here, and we're going to close this up, and we'll say scrolled nav here. And what we want to go ahead and do is we want to change the background color to simply just be black. Like, you know, we don't want any kind of opacity. We're going to change it to specifically black. Now what we also want to do is we want to import a box shadow, which I'm going to go ahead and copy here. And this box shadow is just a simple one, you know, right here. So you can go ahead and see that, just to add some depth from our application to the navigation menu. Okay. And then what we want to go ahead and do is say nav here, and we're going to target the padding, and we're going to change this to 8 pixels and 0. And then let's see here. Now for our branding, I want to go ahead and shrink the image a little bit. So we're going to say image, and we're going to say width, and we're going to set that to 40 pixels, and we're also going to apply a box shadow to that as well. So now if we scroll up and down our navigation, we should see the styles take effect, and our navigation will shrink just a little bit, but enough to go ahead and make a little bit of a difference. Okay, so if we head back over here now and we scroll down to 50 pixels, actually that's not going to work because we didn't actually initiate our function here yet. So I should have known that. So how we can initiate this is what we're going to do is we're going to come down here, we're going to close our methods, and we're going to create a mounted lifecycle hook here. And what we want to go ahead and do is say window.add event listener again, and we want to look for the scroll. And then each time we see a scroll, we want to go ahead and say this dot update scroll. Okay, so with that on our mounted, we should actually see this working here. Okay, so we scroll down 50, you can see that now our navigation ever so slightly got a little bit smaller, and the background turned to a dark black, so that when we get down to something like this, we can't see through it, and we can actually see our whole navigation here. So if I go back up, you can see once we get above 50, our navigation will enlarge and our image will go back to normal here. Now to wrap things up here, I want to go ahead and implement our animation for our mobile navigation menu, because currently it just explicitly comes in and it comes out. Okay, so let's go ahead and implement that. So if you recall, we added this name right here of mobile nav to our transition. Okay, so by default, Vue will go ahead and add this name to the class that is applied to this transition whenever it is toggled in and out of our view. Okay, so let's head down to our style tags here, and what we want to do is open this back up, and then we're going to go to the very bottom here. Let's see, Dropdown nav, and then we're going to say mobile nav, and they have an enter and leave active class. Now what we want to go ahead and do on these two classes is define the transition type, you know, the duration, if it's ease, and what to apply the transition to. So what we're going to say is nav.enter or /enter active, and then they also have one for leaving. So what we're going to say is instead of enter, they have it say leave. Okay, and then let's go ahead and open this up here. So we want to go ahead and define our transition here. So we'll say transition, we'll say 1 second ease all. Now they also have classes for going and leaving too. So what we want to go ahead and say is we're going to do mobile nav, and they have one called enter from. So what we want to go ahead and define on here is a transform. So we're going to say transform here, and we're going to say translate on the X, and we're going to go -250 pixels. So when this comes in, we want it to start 250 pixels off the X axis here. Okay, and then what we want to go ahead and do when it comes in, which will be a class of enter2, we'll say mobile nav enter2. We want to go ahead and say transform and then translate X and then say 0. Okay, now also when it leaves, we want to have go back to negative 250 pixels. So since this is going to be the same styling here or the same transform property, we can just simply go ahead and tack it on here with this mobile nav enter from. So we're going to say mobile nav leave to. Okay, so with that implemented, we should be able to head over to our application, and we should see our navigation or our mobile nav is going to come in smoothly, and then it's also going to leave smoothly. All right, so that's going to go and do it for our video here on our responsive navigation menu inside of Vue 3 with Vue Animations. So if you guys did enjoy it, I would really appreciate you guys leaving a like down below and subscribing for more content like this, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.